Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Natalia Leigh. I'm an indie author and the managing editor at Enchanted Ink Publishing, and I'm back with another editor video for you. And today we are going to be talking about capitalization in your novel, and especially over-capitalization of terms that don't necessarily need to be capped. And this is something that often comes up in science fiction and fantasy, because sci-fi and fantasy writers are often making up words, making up species, and it can be difficult to know when those words should be capped and when they should be lowercase. So we're going to talk about it today. I'm going to give you a few tips and also let you know kind of what my approach is as an editor, the approach of Enchanted Ink Publishing in terms of down style or capitalization, and we'll just go from there. So if you are interested in learning more about capitalization and want some tips for when to cap a word, just stay tuned. Let's get started. Okay, so as I stated in the intro, a lot of writers might sit and ponder whether or not a certain word should be capped in their novel. And again, this is something that I see very often in sci-fi and fantasy, because people are making up terms, versus in, let's say, contemporary romance. I typically don't see as much over-capitalization of terms because there aren't words that are really being made up very often. There aren't animals and species and creatures that are being made up and that need these, unique names. So it's definitely something that we tend to see more in sci-fi and fantasy. Granted, that doesn't mean that it's the only place that it pops up, but over-capping of words is usually in sci-fi fantasy. Now, at EIP, we prefer what Chicago calls down style. When I am leaving comments to authors, especially if you've worked with me, you may have received a comment on your document or a note on your editorial letter or your reader report that says that I and we at EIP opt for a more conservative capitalization style, which just essentially means we do not want to fatigue your reader with capped terms, and we therefore are going to be lowercasing throughout for not only consistency but also just for readability. Now, I do have, I printed out here some quotes from Chicago. The Chicago Manual of Style is the style guide that we use for our fiction. So this is Chicago's preference for capitalization. Proper nouns are usually capitalized, as are some of the terms derived from or associated with proper nouns. For the latter, Chicago's preference is for sparing use of capitals, which is sometimes referred to as down style, and that is from CMOS 8.1 if you have the Chicago Manual of Style and are interested in looking that up. So where does this question of whether or not to cap a term really come from? I believe it comes from two places, and the first, which I've already mentioned, is when an author is making up their own terms or creatures or what have you, and they don't know whether or not that made-up term should be capitalized, since it is something special and unique to their world. So that's definitely the first place I see it. And then the second place where I see this happening is when a term, a word, carries weight and it carries importance, and authors don't know whether that important word needs to be capitalized. Some of the words that I see capitalized all the time that would fall under this category of, a weighty word would definitely be like royal terms, king, queen, prince, princess. I see those capped all the time. And then there are also some fantasy words that I see capped often, elf, fairy, orc, troll, dwarf. Those come across my desk as being capitalized quite often as well. So I believe that those are the two reasons that we writers kind of struggle with knowing whether to cap something, is if it's made up and it's unique to our world, or if it's a weighty word and we feel like, oh, this is a weighty word, so it should probably be capitalized on the page, but that is not always the case. All right, so here I'm going to show you a couple example sentences. We are going to use the word queen, for example. So the first is, after entering the room, the queen sat on the throne. So in this sentence, the queen is just a common noun. It does not need to be capped. So many people would cap that because, again, queen, she's powerful. This is a weighty term. But it doesn't need to be capped when it's just being used as a common noun. Now, in this next sentence, after entering the room, Queen Cassandra sat on the throne. In this case, it would be capped because Queen Cassandra is the name of the character. queen is coming before the name, and this could be used for king, prince, princess, etc. It could be used for terms like deputy or sheriff. So if a term is coming before somebody's name, we're usually going to cap that. So Queen Cassandra would be capped. King Alexander would be capped. And then another place you might see words like this capped are going to be in direct address. So when they're not necessarily being used in front of a name, but they are still being used as a name. You know, what should we do about the criminal, sheriff? So sheriff, you might decide to cap that because it's being used in direct address and it's kind of being used in place of the sheriff's name. So that's somewhere that you might see it capped as well. But again, returning to that original sentence, after entering the room, the queen sat on the throne. Again, queen is just being used as a common noun and it does not need to be capped. Now you might be sitting here and wondering, Natalia, why is this even important? Why should I be worried about whether or not I am capitalizing terms in my novel? And something you might hear editors talk about is over-capitalization or capitalization fatigue. And essentially this happens when you are capitalizing so often in your novel that one, it is distracting for readers, and I do have another quote from CMOS that I'll read regarding that. So it can either be distracting for your readers, which we definitely don't want your readers getting pulled out of the story, or it can just start, actually there are two more, you know, it can be distracting. The terms that are capped can start to lose importance. If you are capitalizing every other word, that capitalized term or those capitalized terms are no longer very important because it's happening so often. So that's one. And then also my opinion on it is that using a lot of caps in your novel can feel a little bit unpolished, or it can feel a little bit amateur if there are just capitals everywhere. And again, that might be just more of an opinion on my part. But again, I opt for down style or conservative capitalization, so I really have a preference for not seeing capitals all over the place. So here is another quote from CMOS. So when asked which style is better, you know, a capitalization style or a down style, they said, quote, "Better is when readers can remain engrossed in a story without frequent stops because something looks odd." So what you don't want is your reader coming across a term, let's say elf. Elf is something that I see capitalized very frequently, elf or fairy. Coming across a capitalized elf and wondering, why is this word capitalized? I don't understand. Is there extra importance on this word? Is this a special elf, a certain kind of elf? Is the character's name elf? So you don't want them having to pause and kind of wonder, why is the author using this style? What is it supposed to be communicating to me? Because every time your reader has to stop and wonder, they're being pulled out of what you want to be an immersive experience. They're getting distracted and they will become more likely to put that book down, right? We want your reader to be totally engrossed and sucked into the story and just constantly turning those pages to find out what happens next, instead of pausing to wonder, why are all of these words capitalized on the page? So if you are working on your novel and you are wondering when you should or should not capitalize something, just keep in mind that common nouns generally do not need to be capitalized, but they can be capitalized when they come in front of a name, like Queen Cassandra. Queen would be capitalized in that case. Or if they're being used in direct address, like, what should we do with the criminal? Sheriff, and sheriff is being used as that character's name or in place of that character's name. Again, if you opt for a down style, that will probably serve you best. My suggestion, of course, and Chicago's suggestion as well, would be to opt for a down style and just keep things simple and do not feel like you need to capitalize every unique term or weighty word in your novel. Now, if you are looking for editing services and you would like to work with us, you can reach us at www.enchantedinkpublishing.com. We tend to book out quite far in advance, so if you know that you're going to want a manuscript critique, line editing, copy editing, formatting, proofreading, or cover design, please make sure to reach out sooner rather than later so that we can get you on our calendar when you and your book need to be on our calendar. Again, that is enchantedinkpublishing.com. You can also find us on Instagram at enchantedinkpublishing, and I am at Natalia A. Leigh. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop those in the comments down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!